Welcome everyone to another Priestess Mercury Hour. And we will start this hour with our centering invocation for Matt and I and all of you. And we call upon the north, the east, the south, and the west, earth, air, fire, and water. All of our angels, ancestors, allies, and Priestess Mercury spew and flow to come through us. Matt and I being the instrument. And I also want to bring in a grounding, a strong grounding presence like this red jasper. Gaia, Mother Earth, that's what I'm feeling. Let's bring strong Mother Earth resonance through, honoring the animals that we are the children of Gaia. And in this astrological flow, honoring her. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
And today, you want to start? You want to?
Oh, well, so today we want to kind of follow up on the major transit of the year. So back on the Neptune Square the Nodes episode, we talked a little bit about Saturn and Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus. And we wanted to really keep digging into that because it's going to be a year-long transit. And, a lot of us over the weekend last week, kind of got a bit pummeled between that square and the full moon in Virgo. And so we wanted to try and have a bit more in-depth kind of healing discussion and dig into some of the insights that Michelle and I were getting from going through that ringer last weekend. So
yeah, we hashed it out yesterday what we were both experiencing, and I also just want to mention every single person I talked to, client and in my personal life, felt this pummeling. There was either a pummeling, a negative energy, like feeling negative, or grief, really intense grief waves, or both, in such a strong fashion that it was more overwhelming than usual, it seemed.
Right.
And Matt and I were also feeling that as well. So we had this talk yesterday where we brought it back to the Uranus square Saturn transition of the year, and that the healing key for going through, this is going to kind of be the year theme, right? Mm-hmm. That the healing key is to respond in a new way to these pummelings, because the pummelings are here, right?
Right. Well, and it's that dynamic that this year in particular is marked by. I mean, last year had a lot to do with abuses of power and reactions to that. And this year, we're dealing with the need now to finally get a break. But in order for that break to come through, some old habits and ways of thinking and narrating our stories have to break apart.
And that's where we were. Yeah, that's right. Where we were talking about Saturn in Capricorn versus Saturn in Aquarius, and that the 2.5 years ish of Saturn in Capricorn that we just came out of is about Capricorn's about the structures. And so it was facing the limitation of all these toxic structures and the toxic patriarchy. And as Saturn has now moved into Aquarius, we were talking about how Aquarius is more about the self and specifically the witness,
Hmm.
because we have so many aspects of self. We have the ego, we have the inner child. So we were talking about how Aquarius is the witness and Leo, its opposite polarity, is the inner child.
Hmm.
And so, and how Aquarius really kind of represents the witness, and the witness is the you that's watching everything happen or noting everything happen. When you develop the witness in a meditation practice or any spiritual practice, you get better and better at that. Like you can say, oh, I'm feeling sad, without identifying with the sorrow, or oh, I'm obsessing over this thought, but I'm not the thought itself.
Right. It's that, yeah, I'm recognizing I'm having a moment where uh the I'm feeling the emotion very very much, as opposed to when is this ever going to end? Kind of feeling like I'm stuck in the sadness. I can't ever get out of the sadness.
Well, it's
Those
a
can.
note there, and we want to note there, again, thinking of that conversation yesterday, that you're going to feel the feeling of it's too much. When is it ever going to end?
Hmm.
But to note that too, because there's
Right.
so much with the witness, there's a lot of focus on just watching the thoughts. And I feel like there's not enough focus on also disidentifying or unidentifying with the feeling that you can feel. And this was definitely me this past week. You can feel
Hmm.
completely pummeled, overwhelmed, hopeless, negative. There's no fear in that. And you can say, I am not that negativity. I am not the hopelessness. I am not the despair. And it's, whereas the feelings kind of, they course through like
Right.
weather patterns. The thoughts are more the narrative and the story that can lock the weather pattern in if you don't let it flow through. That if, when you experience hopelessness, a hopeless feeling, and you say life's never going to get better, it's always going to be this way, that narrative locks the feeling of hopelessness in, so it can just spin round and round forever in the neural pathway. And that, and I
Right.
know I'm like, I just want to say one more thing,
Hmm.
in that these neural pathways form based on these, I'm not going to go into the brain chemistry, but those are the loops that we're so used to. Your negative narrative
Right.
that re-loops the same instead of letting the feelings pass through.
Right. And a lot of it comes from when you're growing up and you experience certain reactions from parents, family, friends, and you set those kind of neural expectations of how you're going to be received from other people, and those can tend to come up, and you can feel like this is the type of reaction I'm always going to get.
Yeah,
uh,
and those neural expectations are exactly like what we would call ego and shadow, that the ego develops under age 7. That's where you develop these neural pathways and you become maybe the people pleaser, or
mhm,
you become the bully, or you become the rebel. You develop these ways of responding that either allow you to feel needed and valued by your family and the people around you, or that maybe even push against it and you identify more with a misanthropic or rebellious pursuit than the wanting to be needed and wanted and valued pursuit. But that it's when we're so young that we
mhm,
develop these neural pathways that basically is your ego, your conscious self saying, I am this. And
mhm,
then everything else gets pushed into the shadow. You might be super sensitive and you push your sensitivity down into the shadow and then play the role of being really tough,
mhm,
for instance. Or you might push your hopefulness into the shadow and become very like pragmatic and cantankerous.
mhm.
These neural expectations just get looped. And they play over and over again.
Right. Yeah, and that's that. Astrologically speaking, that's that Saturn. in Aquarius. That's, those expectations that we have, the limitations that we sense that are there, how we tend to interact with groups. These are the patterns that we have when we're socially interacting,
Right.
and they can get distorted from if we don't develop a kind of practice to be able to step back and detach a little bit. And that's what's needed in Aquarius, is that detachment, to
Right.
say, hey, okay, I know I've got this expectation and I need a new expectation.
Yeah, that the Saturn Aquarius is saying, look at these limitations in your psyche of the self, these neural pathways, how you've always identified with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
See them, which you do need. And this goes back to the Neptune squaring the nodes podcast and discussion, where this Virgo full moon is like, let's look at the details.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pick it apart and see, like, oh, like I noticed with myself a neural pathway that's a negative response, like it's like quick to go negative.
Mm-hmm.
And so during the pummeling, I'm just going, oh, look at you going negative, and look at you feeling overwhelmed. And that creates the distance, the detachment, the little bit of space. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you're working the Saturn in Aquarius and saying, I'm not going to identify with that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to identify with the negativity. I'm not going to identify with the overwhelm. I'm just going to radically accept it. I'm going to
Right.
radically accept that it exists and not try to fix it, not try to change it. Just radically allow it to be present and learn to build resilience and tolerance around it as that first step.
Right.
And that's the Saturn Aquarius. And then squaring Uranus is the fun part, the exciting part, the hard part.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's two ways to see what Uranus is doing. I mean, what happens is that we have those expectations that we've built up, and they can be uh, one, they can give us a good sense of boundaries with people, and we need that. We need to size people up when we're in social settings, because otherwise we get steamrolled by everybody. You can't just like unconditionally encounter every single person that you run into. So you do need like a sense of good, solid expectations, a way to judge how you should expect someone to act. But when those get too rigid and we don't do that kind of mercurial thing where it's like we have to scrutinize and figure out exactly, okay, so there's all what I expect from most people, but what is this person presenting to me? Or what is this group presenting to me? And allowing for a shift or a change in that, and allowing you to make alterations to those expectations. And when we don't do that, then this Uranus principle occasionally comes through and is like, okay, this is going to break apart. I'm going to give you all the uh, all the breaking of the rules here. I'm gonna all
Not
the
make it
things
go
that
your way. I'm going to
yeah,
not
things
make
aren't
it
gonna
go
go
your
your
way.
way.
It's not
You're
going to be typical. You're people pleasing. And I just want to come in there and re-highlight that expectations and how you're phrasing that, because I think that's so great to understand. Again, like looking at your role in it and your expectation on others. Like, I expect people to be kind. I expect people to tune into my feelings. I expect people to make the same sacrifices I make. This is the ego just
mm-hmm,
operates this way for us all. So it's awesome. We all have these egos that do that, and it's natural.
mm-hmm,
And then it's like looking at those. What do I expect others to do? Do I expect them to be like me? Most of us expect other, and
mm-hmm,
we're all astonished. How could you be that way? I'm not that way. It's like
mm-hmm,
our own naivete. And then it's like, being able to take that expectation and come back to the self too. And like, why do I expect everyone to be kind? Why do I expect everyone to be fair? Why do I expect, and it's, again, you don't really need to answer it with
Right.
that Aquarius part. It's like just noting it. Oh,
Yeah.
how I expect this. And then what you're saying, Matt, is that when you do that, you bring that suppleness in, you come out of that rigidity that just has everyone, including yourself, in these neural pathway expectation loops.
Right.
And that with the square of Uranus coming full circle here, Uranus is not going to let any of us get away with it anymore. It will break apart the old
Yeah.
structure, Taurus.
Yeah. And I know, like, personally, like, I was coming up against this expectation because I grew up with ADHD, even though it wasn't diagnosed, because I, born in the 70s. And so for the most part, people thought this was just kids who watch too much TV. But I've also often faced a lot of scrutiny because of my relationship to time and detail is different. And so often it's not, the social expectation. So as I got older, I had a lot of experiences where people scolded me or got shamed me for, you're supposed to be smart. How did you miss these details? Why can't you be an adult? You know, just do it. Just, all this emphasis on executive function. And so, I've got all these expectations that anytime I enter into conversations about accountability, that I'm setting myself up to be unempowered, shamed, uh, that it's all going to be my fault. And so I have this tendency to shirk away and try to be vague, and let's ride this out and maybe they'll forget. And that,
Can
that
I stop
works
you right there
sometimes.
and
Yeah.
just like resum up? So like your ego defense mechanism or neural pathway loop is to be vague and diffuse and dodge those expectations.
Hmm.
And that also the neural pathway loop is expecting others to judge you, expecting others to feel that on some level you're not measuring up, and then probably pinging deep down in the self of like feeling the same way. So that there's shame as the
Hmm.
big feeling, and then there's the stories like I'm
Right.
not good enough on that's what it is for all of us all the time.
Right.
Like I'm not good enough, you're not good enough. um so to use what we're saying, it's like if you can next time this happen, well, it's going to happen in the square, it's going to happen wherever it
Right.
is in your chart. So as you're facing it in the house of the structure that needs to change is your resources and the narrative, that where you're facing your narrative limitations are goals and aspirations in the collective.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's where I get my resources from, is also part of it. And, I've having to juggle running a business and uh, looking for work. And the looking for work part is the hard part of, like, that's where I'm being subjected to, how do I see all these job descriptions, and like everything seems to scream out at me, uh, must be detail oriented, uh, needs to meet hard deadlines, and
Right.
job after job after job. And I look at them and I'm like, this is a Sisyphean hell for me.
I like
Like,
that.
because
Sisyphean
I have
hell.
this
Hashtag Sisyphean
expectation
hell.
that
Sorry.
that means that I'm going to be in a place where I'm judged, micromanaged.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any
It's bringing up
autonomy.
the wound. If
Yeah.
we narrow it, simmer it down, it's bringing up the wound. The square brings up the wound, and the wound is I am not good enough. I'm not going to measure up. I have a lot of shame. The old response is I'm going to be vague and diffuse and dodge and hope for the best and hope to find something, hope somebody hires me. Right. And then this opportunity for the square where, and Uranus in that second house is saying you can't get away with that anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's like there's that episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza is trying to evade getting fired. And so he keeps finding an office to put himself in so that they can't fire him. I mean, that's kind of how I feel a lot of the time
Perfect
with jobs.
metaphor. Yeah. Yeah. So, and so the square is saying that you can no longer do that. It's not going to work anymore. That's what the square is saying. It's a
Right.
crisis. Squares are a crisis of action. You can't do the old way anymore. You have to take a new action step. And then the Aquarius Saturn is asking you to have a different to create this new neural pathway, a
Right.
new response.
Yeah, it's about, and it dawned on me as you and I were talking the other day that I really need to, in my spiritual practice, to include this time to make sure that I'm cultivating a new expectation. So, in other words, seeing the good side of the Uranus transit. So I'm seeing what's the liberation, and if I can put my focus on that, at least 5% more, 10%
Yeah,
more.
this is where I want to come in and be like, so there's two tracks. One track is your spiritual mindfulness practice that helps you create distance. So, like, we'll just keep using you as the example so that you can say, here's shame. I am not the shame. Here's the neural pathway expectation. And I'm not going to identify with that either. Here it is. I don't need to fix it. I don't need to change it. I'm just going to radically accept that it's present. And I'm getting pinged, pummeled, inundated, and it's showing up in all these ways that feels a lot. And then track number 2 is Uranus saying, what do you want to feel? And this is what we were doing yesterday.
Right.
And instead of looking at it like that sort of, I'm sorry, my little cantankerous remark, external create your own reality bullshit, like, I want a job that I want to manifest, instead of looking at the external,
Right.
to go to the internal and say, I want to feel accepted in my new job. I want to feel valued in my new job. Like, for you to like say those feelings that you.
Yeah. Well, and then also, like, what would, doing a little imaginative work of what would that feel like, especially if you've got a lot of experience, and the past gives us a lot of these experiences that form those negative expectations. So that it's not that those aren't real. When we deny that, that happens a lot. Like I've had that thrown at me. Like,
Well, that's why it's important to
yeah.
honor the shame and honor the neural pathway loop that formed, like you were saying earlier, that it's natural, and that when we go through horrifying things like abuse and oppression, or lighter stressful things of being judged and not seen, and we're all in that same boat, and it's important to honor that. You just don't want to identify with it.
Right.
You're not trying to fix yourself. It's a very subtle difference, and you're just wanting. So the Uranus part is saying, and maybe you can't. That's what I was thinking too. Imagine into what you want to feel, and maybe you can't. Maybe you just can't, and you just have to start by saying, I can't feel it, I can't imagine it, but I want to feel safe, or I want to feel valued. It's like Uranus is the lightning strike. Uranus is the miracle, the lightning strike, the sudden entrance from out of nowhere that you, and I feel Uranus bursting through me right now saying, you do not have to make it happen. It's not about, oh, good job, you've worked hard. Here's the reward and the manifestation. That's where I get my cantankerous. I'm like, fuck that. It's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have to do our self-work. We have to create the space. That's the self-work, like the space for Uranus to come through. That if you can find that little bit of distance and not identify with the shame and the pain and the wounded self and the pain body and just honor it, Uranus will come in, and it's not about whether you deserve it or not. It's not about whether you've worked hard or not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Uranus comes in equally.
Yeah, it's just, you're right. It's there. It's all like the narrative that you've relied on is there, and the feeling that you want is there too. And it isn't that you have to be good enough or do anything. It's just, it's when you can detach enough, you can see it, and that's,
Or not even see it, it just comes through.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of a simple metaphor. Let's use a hoarding metaphor. Like if you are hoarding and you're in like a studio apartment and you just keep collecting stuff, and let's say everything you collect is like you identifying with your pain and shame. Like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's this outfit from when that person made fun of me. Here's this couch from when I was ostracized. I don't know. This is a dumb example maybe, but like you fill your studio apartment with all the shame and pain, and let's say Uranus is this like move this truck filled with like new furniture and like a redecoration. This is a terrible. Do you have a
um
better metaphor? Like you can't bring something new when the old is filling up the space.
right. Yeah, because then you see this, all this furniture. Well, let's say that someone has a giveaway on the street that has all this great furniture, but you are like looking at your apartment and you're like, where I don't have anywhere to put it. I can't put it anywhere.
Yeah.
Instead of like being able to just let go of some things and then
Right. It's the
make room for it.
making room. It's the making room. And
Mm-hmm.
that's Saturn Aquarius, when you can have some detachment and distance from the constant barrage of your neural pathway thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So many feelings are just neural pathway triggered. Like, here's the thought that makes me feel like crap about myself. Here's the thought that makes me feel like crap about myself. And sometimes it's that versus a genuine feeling stirring in the moment from something that's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
There's a subtle difference there. And the more that you have a practice, the more you can note your internal experience and you can feel the difference. Like, oh, that's a neural pathway thought. This is a genuine feeling. And, that distance, and that it's really what Aquarius is saying is that when you take space, that that then Uranus gets to come in this square and
Mm-hmm.
bring the new, bring the love of your life,
Mm-hmm.
bring the job that you didn't foresee coming, bring justice where there's just been a whole life long of injustice.
Right.
Bring it's That's the power of Uranus. And again, remembering like from last podcast that these energies are alive in the collective unconscious. They
Mm-hmm.
are sentient, conscious forces that we are always connected to, that we inherit the moment we become a human. They
Right.
course through us. So, Uranus,
Mm-hmm.
we just have to create space. And then, if we don't create space in this square, Uranus will be harsh.
Well, it's also, going back to what we were saying at the beginning, like with those narratives, um, uh, it's not so much that, I mean, yes, we experience these restrictions and these expectations when we were younger, but a lot of the time we're kind of re-subjecting ourselves to that all the time, and it's a recognition that I this is me. Why am I doing this to myself?
That's
Uh,
ultimately what it comes down to, right?
yeah,
That's the
and
building of the witness and seeing the self from the tree branch,
yeah,
not
it's
the inner child, the opposite of Aquarius, the Leo, the inner child. It's like, I'm hurt, I'm hurt, I'm hurt, I'm hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's one of those things it's the hard perspective to, or the hard pill to swallow. Um,
Yeah.
but I know for myself, the second I can witness that and witness that, oh wait, I'm doing this to myself. Why do I want to do that? Let's be good to myself.
And then, well, then you got to be careful right there, because there's an
Well, yeah, good.
expectation coming through.
Yeah.
You got to go, why am I doing that to myself? Scale it back and go, I'm doing that to myself. And then just notice the inner child, notice the shame, notice the hurt, and just
Mm-hmm.
say, go ahead on through hurt, because it's very easy to go right into positivity police with this stuff. And it's such a different, and
Right.
that's bypassing. You don't want to go look at this negative neural pathway loop. I got to fix it so that I can manifest what I, is possible for me, because I'm broken. I need it fixed. And I fear negativity, and I fear loss. And so I have to only keep my eyes on the prize, and I've got to push myself like a workout. Like I got to do my jog so that I lose the weight. Like all of
Mm-hmm.
that is not what the thing. That's just
Right.
ego in another neural pathway loop of like, if I'm thin, rich, and mated, then yay, there's my life. This is like the depth of being able to just notice with love,
Right.
with honor, with
Yeah,
love.
it takes time. I mean, even just recognizing it, and then you still have to sit with that for a little while
Yeah, that's the
and
hard part,
let
right?
the feeling go through. And then recognize that, well, this is an opportunity, because if I did that to myself, I can do other things for myself. Uh, and it's kind of an empowering moment, but you do have to feel that. You have to go through that feeling. You have to honor the inner child. Love the inner child in a way, by letting them have that feeling and not turn them into an object, because
Yeah,
that's
and I want to really like challenge you on that. I don't think it feels empowering at all going through this square. I don't experience that.
well,
All
not yet. I mean, the empowerment comes after you've gone through the.
yeah, like when there's when Uranus is able to bring the new.
Mhm.
And the hard part about that is that it could take a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we take the symbol of the transit, we're going to be in it all year.
And for some people, I just had the flash of, sorry, a little bit interrupty. I think I'm
That's
always
okay.
a bit interrupty, but just that sometimes you don't get the thing. And I just had this
Right.
vision of Donnie Darko, the movie, where at the end he like laughs because he knows he has to die. Some
Mhm.
people like, it's again, a hard pill to swallow, but tragedy happens too. And
Mhm.
so the square, to also not get too, again, the ego wants to come in and be like, it's going to be better. It's going to be easier. It may not. You might have a tragic outcome. There might be a loss that has no anything else but loss to it. But your response to it is what can be new. Your sense of self around it is what Uranus is trying to make new. This isn't about getting what you want. It's
Right.
about the evolution of the self.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is like, the empowering part of it comes on the other side. And the thing that you can't sense or see yet. Um, and sometimes when you get to the other side of that, the thing that you wanted is really not great for you. Uh, and so even if you
You
got
just
it,
don't
it
get
might.
what you want.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes when you realize that you're responsible for caring for yourself, that sometimes you have to do what you didn't want to do. Sometimes you have to swallow that hard pill, and do things that are less comfortable, and work on certain things, certain patterns that you have. Maybe it's, you have to go out, like myself, like, okay, I have to swallow a pill and go out and get a job because this business isn't going to like spring up overnight.
Yeah,
Uh,
using you as an example, it could be that you have to get a job that isn't going to match the feelings that you want, but how you narrate yourself through that is the new
right.
response. And like, I'm feeling in my own life and what kind of the way my own life has been since 2017. I feel like it's been all that. It's like it's been like a takeaway. It's been like grief and loss and solitude and
Hmm.
restriction, and discipline, and a very Saturnian journey. And it took a long time, and it's still there because that's our ego, where it's like, I just want the cookie, I just want the good feeling, I just want the
Right.
man, I just want the success, I just want the home, I just want to feel secure, I just want to feel good. And that this square, and we're just talking about this square, this is a very focused conversation
Hmm.
that we're all facing right now. This is not about that. This is about having a new sense of self respond to the same crap, right?
Hmm.
And it's always a pattern with us. This is like the nature of the way it works. You have your patterns that you always face, the same restrictions, the same limitations over and over. And when
Hmm.
you can respond to them in a new way
Hmm.
with yourself, like,
Yeah. And, and it starts, the witness part, starts with recognizing, for instance, that my tone changes when I start talking about what I'm going through. I might, you know, when do I get that? Why do I have
oh
to do
yeah,
this
we were
again?
we were really,
I mean, I may not necessarily be that whiny. I mean, that's a bit of a caricature, but,
but we were talking about that yesterday, how we need to honor the tone but notice the tone, right?
mhm,
As Matt and I were both sharing, and the tone of pain, and the how, and just noticing that tone of pain.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the tone is that the inner child's
It's totally
reaction.
the inner child. And the inner child, it literally is the little girl or the little boy, the little gender non-identified little being in there, the precious egos. I mean, we are precious egos. We're like little chihuahuas, all of us. We're all tender. I remember I had a teacher that would call us tender, sweet bellied animals.
Mhm,
I think that was it. And like that, that's a part of us too. And so this, again, this isn't about saying you're bad for having a defeated tone. And
right.
it's, again, it's like just noticing it and letting it, it's like letting it walk through the door. If we use the studio apartment, if that's your ego, if that's your mind, you want to let everything walk in the door and walk out the door and not get stuck in there.
Mhm. Yeah, and recognizing that everybody has this. Like,
We're all the
even the
same.
people you think are highly successful, I mean, uh, if you were to see their life objectively, there are moments quite often that they encounter things that are repeating, that
I
they
mean,
are
that's where Robin Williams, perfect. I mean, and that Aquarius is how we're all the same and the self together. It's that, again, that weird paradox of like collective and self together, that all of our brains work the same way in this human body. There is a collective similarity and archetypal. We're all connected to the archetypal forces. We're all connected to Uranus. We all develop neural pathways that cement by age 7. We all get stuck. We all hurt.
yeah, these big kind of um patterns and feelings, like we all go through that. Now the minutia of it, the how those things show up in your life will vary from person to person.
Yeah, the
uh,
minutia, which is so keen right now with the Virgo full moon. It's such a great opportunity. to look at your minutia, and again with that Pisces opposite, to bring that, because it's like that's how you can nurture the inner child,
Mm-hmm.
is bringing in that love of oneness. It's okay. It's okay. And Pisces is so big with that. It's like, it's okay if you die. It's okay if
Mm-hmm.
you suffer. It's okay if you're a like you do a bad act that's unforgivable. Like Pisces loves all the same,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Virgo part is like, we can go in right now. I'm going in right now and I'm looking at my first house, third house square right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so like really looking at the opportunity for Uranus to come in and give me a new perception. This is the part I feel like we need to talk about a little more, is the
Yep.
Uranus part, because on one hand, we don't want to get stuck in outcomes like, oh, you're just going to get the job of your dreams.
Right.
And my perception is just going to be all bright and shiny like a new coin. It's not about that. But Uranus does, in fact, bring the new. It's inevitable. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Uranus is. Uranus is like, here's the new. So whatever it is, it's new. For
Right.
you, a new resource. For me, a new perception.
Right. And when you engage with, um, the expectations of Uranus, like it's all about how do we come to this, and when we can cultivate better expectations for ourselves, it doesn't mean we're going to get the thing that we want, because we may not,
Right.
but it is that we are going to get a somewhat more fulfilling experience.
More fulfilling experience. That feels resonating. And again, back to that cultivating the new expectation, which I love how you say it that way,
Mm-hmm.
because I think there's a lot of shaming for having expectations. And it's like, we all have them. We
Yeah.
have conditional lives. We can unconditionally love our lives.
Well, good luck having a life if you don't have any expectations. I mean, this is the person that I would be like, what is that's like Data. And even Data on Star Trek had expectations. He was a robot.
I think of Data, or I think of like the guru on the mountaintop that's like, I don't need anything from the external at all.
Right. Yeah, the people there aren't no people who don't have expectations. It's
Yeah. So
part of how we perspective works and how we encounter each other. We have to have expectations,
we
or
have to have,
everything is new all the time and we don't even know what we are. We're just kind of lost. We
and
become a stereotype in a way.
you become a prototype.
Yeah, prototype is a better
Right?
word, but
And
yeah.
that's the way the archetypes work, is they will prototype you out. They are collective sentient forces. Anyway, that's a diatribe. I'm going to not go there. So cultivating new expectations,
Right.
and and allowing yourself, if you're able, as you're creating space from the usual suspects, can you imagine in, can
Mm-hmm.
you feel these new expectations? Imagine, take a creative journey. Matt and I were just having a conversation yesterday where we were just taking turns saying, this is what I want to feel in these different areas of our life, and just giving ourselves a little bit of space to share and be witnessed in what we truly want in our heart. Like kind of letting that Leo inner child part just say, I
Mm-hmm.
want this.
Yeah, and it's also, it frees you up from, because Uranus is going to bring you something new, and a lot of times it's going to bring you something you didn't know you wanted.
Right.
Um,
The element of surprise.
and if you haven't engaged with uh, the feeling, and the letting go of the details, then you can be, there's that tarot card in the Rider Waite Smith deck where it's the Four of Cups, where it's like the guy refuses to even look at
The
the
fourth
cup
cup.
that's being offered, um, and
Oh, such
it's
a true.
it's like that. It's like you're being given a gift that could be really great to you, and great for you, but you have to be able to accept it and open to it. And it's that
Right.
opening up that this process is about. It's about opening yourself
It's
up
about,
to.
is it back again to this creating space and
Mhm.
noting the thoughts and feelings and not identifying them, and also bringing that over to the Uranus part where you can cultivate new expectations and also say, I'm open to being shown what I don't even know I want.
Right.
Which, so like that is so exciting to me.
Hmm.
And I love feeling that in myself. Like I, as a Scorpio with Aquarius rising, it's Aquarius and Scorpio are both fixed. I am a very fixed. I'm like, this is what I want. Well, with the big things, little things, it's like freaking never ending indecisiveness. Libra moon. But like the, so I relate to being like having these fixed ideals or fixed desires. And I love the thought of Uranus coming in and showing me, just turning my head and being
Hmm.
like, hey, like I'm just walking down this one path, and then
Right.
Uranus is like, hey, look over here, walk down this path. And it's like, oh my God, this path feels so good. I had no idea.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the time I went snowshoeing.
Hmm.
I didn't want to go at all. I was like, no, that does not, like, I zero want to go snowshoeing. And then we got out there and it was like amazing. I didn't know that I would love snowshoeing. And then
Right.
after that, we went to this hot spring indoor outdoor. And again, I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm never going to be able to go out in sub-degree weather and jump in a cold pool from a hot pool. Like, no, that's not me. And
Hmm.
then I did it over and over because it was like, this is the best.
Yeah, and it's I'm raising a co-parenting a kid, and he's getting into his preteen years, but it's one of those things that I'm always trying to nudge at him a little bit to like open up to the possibility that you'll like something.
Yeah.
um you know and occasionally he does, and when he opens up to it, then that's all he wants for quite a while. And
Yeah.
it's
Uranus
interesting
opens
to
you.
see. It's interesting to see that kind of unfold for him.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
cool that you can see that at his age, his fresh young mind open to that. And that, like our brains, the Aquarius, the brain, it's like, you, we all know as we get older, you get more fixed in your ways. And it's like you can give into that, but you can also not give into that. And
right.
Aquarius represents, and Uranus represents not giving into that. Which again, I get so excited thinking about that. And not just with your proclivities and likes, but relationships. You might think you want a certain this kind of relationship, and then you want this kind of relationship. You might think you want this person and it's like this person, or you might think your career, like again with
Right.
the externals that are like the big things, like a relationship or a job or a home or a lifestyle, that those can have big shifts, Uranian shifts as well.
Yeah, I mean, give it enough time and stick with the feeling. And that's why, the when if you're going to do a practice to cultivate expectation, focus less on the details and more on
The
how
fe-
you feel. How do you want to feel? And then you get all these
yeah.
possibilities for ways to feel that way that didn't just involve this one particular partner, this one particular job, this one, like we
Particular
think that those are
lifestyle.
the only ways we can get it, but no, there are lots of ways to feel something.
and
um,
and that's the scary part. There are lots of ways to feel something, and Uranus loves to come in and shake it all up. And it's
mhm.
hard again because our egos are like, must do it for life, must be forever, like have to be a good person, bad person if I change. There's
Mhm.
so much ego resistance, and all our egos respond that way. And Uranus really does allow, it's like it can be brand new. This is the point of evolution. It's the moment where the single cell bacteria became the fish or
Right.
whatever the next level up is. It's the moment the human the human being could levitate or whatever. It's the moment you step into the astral plane. It's the moment you evolve, and there are these moments, and
Yeah.
they're real tangible moments, and that's Uranus Taurus squaring Saturn.
Aquarius.
Whoa. Yeah, like that.
It's
That's
all Greek to me.
this year. What's that?
I said it's all Greek to me.
It's
You're getting tripped up on the suffixes
I
from
know, yeah.
the Greek, yeah,
And when
and
I start
Latin.
really bringing Uranus through, I start to feel really wackadoodle and like eclectic-y and like, whoa, like I love it. I love Uranus. I love the way Uranus feels. Like now I'm feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Uranus, just to talk about the feeling, it does feel that way. It's like there's a zany, there's a scary, a zany, like caution of the wind, just go with it, just open, like a zephyrus, like a windy breath, like open, and that we all have that in us. We've got other things too that are like more weighted and more like shouldy and more like stable, secure. And then, but Uranus is just like anything is possible, anything. And if you're
Right.
not afraid to hurt or be hurt, if you're not, there's so much fear around being hurt. We try to protect
Mm-hmm.
everyone from it, but it's like, it's totally okay. I mean, obviously disclaim abuse and blah, 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 but like,
Right.
it's okay to go through loss, pain, separation, death, suffer. Like, we're supposed to be going through it.
Right. I mean, there's a difference between wanting to collectively uh, be better people and not hurt other people, but it's a whole other thing to take it all the way back and say that all pain is bad. Um,
Right. And that also to note that it's the ego part of our self, the conscious ego animal, sweet bellied animal. That's what she called it, the sweet bellied animal. Part
mhm.
of ourself that doesn't want to hurt or be hurt. It's just this natural part of who we are. And Uranus is a collective unconscious force, an archetypal
Mhm.
force that comes up and challenges that.
Mhm. Yeah, because I mean, part of growth in the physical requires a bit of a breakdown and requires a bit of pain and growing. And you can't, I mean, not to go take it all back to that reductive "no pain, no gain" slogan from the '80s, but there is an element of you're going to have to risk a little bit of discomfort to get a much bigger, more richer and fulfilling life. If you
Yes.
close yourself off too much, you it's you actually wind up bringing the pain that you're trying to avoid because you're cutting yourself off from the
Yes.
flow and the growth of the universe.
What you resist will persist.
Hmm.
And Uranus is that force that defies tradition, traditional structures, traditional beliefs, traditional ways of identifying. It defies it, it's rebellious, it brings the new. And it's true that to grow, to evolve, if you care about that, and you don't have to care about that, but then you're not going to be listening to this podcast if you don't. But like, it does hurt and pain, and sometimes it's messy and ugly. Sometimes it's betrayal and
Right.
lying and like that, like that element of the shadowy part of Uranus too. Just like we are capable of all of it. And again, it's the ego, it's the sweet bellied animal turned rigid by the toxic patriarchy that becomes astonished when any darkness occurs. Like, and it's like, actually, remember we're dark and we're light and
Hmm.
we're messy and we're vulnerable and we're all just showing up pretending to know what we're doing at all times.
Right. I mean, you can run away to the Arctic Circle to avoid the sunset, but it'll still catch up with you.
You can, yeah,
And you'll be in the Arctic Circle, so yeah, you're gonna freeze your freeze your tail off while you're up there. But yeah, the night comes for everyone. The day is there. Like these are cycles, and we go through them, and they're helpful if we let them be. They
I mean, yeah, that's the whole point of astrology from the where we vibe with it is like understanding the cycles on a mental level so that you can tune into them.
yeah.
Like by knowing that we have this square all year, it's helped me so much because I definitely feel the limitations of that perception getting challenged and how I can I'm working so hard to re-narrate. Like it's just this past week has been a constant note. Note you
Hmm.
feel despair. Note you feel hope. It's a constant.
You've got
And
the post-its everywhere, right?
as far as the empowerment piece goes, I just do have to say that now that I feel on the other side of this wave of it, because we're going to get these waves all year,
Hmm.
I do feel empowered because I actually successfully moved through the darkest part of myself, a part that I haven't seen in like 20 years because of
Hmm.
how intense things are right now. I actually navigated through noting her, loving her, just letting her be there without trying to fix or change her. And it's all good. It's like nothing bad happened.
Right.
And it, I don't even want to say it that way because again, that brings a little bit of the
Yeah, I mean, nothing uh, world ending happened for you. Like
nothing
you.
world ending. And instead, I do feel, I really want to pick up on that empowerment piece. I actually feel, which is one of the Aquarius pieces, is like, I feel really a lot of like strength in like myself feels stronger.
Hmm.
And that feels good. My sweet bellied animal ego's like, oh, good feeling.
Hmm.
And that's the empowerment is like, look what I did. That's the little ego being like, look, I noted and I didn't identify and now I have more space and now Uranus
Hmm.
can come in and bring the new.
Yeah, yeah, and for myself, like I over the weekend, like I on the eve of the full moon, like I had a flare up, and then I rather quickly. I mean, I went through it for a few hours, and then all of a sudden it hit me that, oh wait, okay, this is my narrative, and that's fine. And these are feelings that need to be. I'm not feeling heard. I'm not feeling seen. So how do I see myself? And then I was able to like within like a day to bounce back to like, okay, now I'm in control of, or feeling it at least. I'm somewhat in control of where I'm going. I'm
Yeah,
feeling
and that
power, and
really honors the ego. It's like the part that feels in control again or feels proud of the self is our egos responding with that little bit of like, yay, I did it.
Mhm.
So how the ego, gets rewarded by the internal shift, that nothing external even needs to change. And there's that internal shift of making space that where the ego can get a little bit of that cookie, a little bit of that dopamine hit that we're constantly after.
Yeah, it may not come in the way that the ego thought it should or wanted it to, and but yeah, it gets a little. There is reward that will show up if you're expecting it. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's just so great is like the reward is and how much this feels like Saturn Aquarius, that the word reward can be internal.
yeah, yeah. Saturn is always like working to build up our spine, so that
Yes.
we can sit upright, stand upright, do things that we need to do, and it's just not comfortable because we don't
Capital
want to.
S self. Yeah. It's uncomfortable process to get this capital S spine, capital S self.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
our bell. So we got to stick to our.
Yeah, so we'll be back. I'm sure we'll be coming back to other insights from this particular transit. We'll be back to that again in the summer when Saturn retrogrades back across its square with Uranus, and then we'll in December we'll be back to the last of it. So we'll be cycling through this. It's a good lesson all year. So if you have any, if there are things that you want to make proclamations about, that you want to expect that to cultivate that, feel free to leave that in the comments. Let us know what you want to feel good about. What do you want to feel into? We want to hear that. Drop us an email at priestessmercurypodcast or if, as always, if you want to, if you're looking for psychotherapy with a lot of intuitive insight and healing modalities, check in with Michelle at michellebloom.com. If you need an astrology reading or a tarot reading, check in with me.
And we will see you next time.